Imagine finding a cherished family heirloom that holds the memories of your loved ones, only to be faced with a family conflict over it. In a heartfelt Reddit tale, one cousin grapples with the emotional weight of asking for their late grandmother's knitting needles, igniting a debate about ownership and sentimentality. Dive into this poignant story and discover the complexities of family ties and the value of memories. My grandmother taught my cousins and me how to knit when we were old enough to follow instructions, usually around 8 or 9 years of age. Out of more than 20 grandchildren, I was the only one who continued to knit. When my grandmother passed away, all of the grandchildren were given an opportunity to request items from her possessions. I asked only for her knitting needle kit. My other cousins asked for multiple pieces of her jewelry, vintage perfume bottles, and silver combs. My younger cousin, who does not knit, requested several of the items mentioned above, including the knitting needle kit. My mother and my aunt debated over who deserved the needles. My mother eventually relented because she did not want to argue during a difficult time. As a result, my cousin ended up receiving the knitting needles. I received a signature perfume that my grandmother loved wearing. My aunt claimed that they were the original glass bottles my grandmother insisted on keeping and refilling. I knew they were not the originals because the tops were plastic, not the beautiful frosted glass that I remembered from my childhood. Although I was upset, I chose to let it go. I also received a small inheritance for which I was grateful. With it, I purchased a new knitting set and yarn. Fast forward to Thanksgiving, when my cousin mentioned that she had been cleaning out her attic. She explained that she had stumbled upon some of our grandmother's things, including the knitting needles. These sentimental items were in her attic. Later, while helping her clean up, I noticed she was wearing my grandmother's wedding ring. I asked her if that was another item she had requested. She detailed everything she received, which amounted to a much larger inheritance of $10,000 and many more valuables, including the perfume bottles I had supposedly received. I inquired whether she was using the knitting needles. She replied that she was not, so I asked if she would consider letting me have them to use. She said she would think about it, and the rest of the night continued without incident. At some point during the evening, my cousin must have spoken with my aunt, who confronted me unexpectedly while I was walking down the hallway. She criticized me for asking my younger cousin, who was only 4 years younger and over the age of 30, to give up a sentimental item. I was the designated driver for the evening and was stunned by her reaction. I explained that I had simply asked, and that my cousin had said she would think about it. My aunt began raising her voice, prompting my uncle to come out and inquire about the situation. He immediately sided with my aunt, but attempted to de-escalate the conflict. On the way home, I asked my mother about what actually happened during the division of items from my grandmother's estate. She expressed that she did not want to discuss it and accused me of being oddly fixated on it. She said it was embarrassing for me to even think about asking about the knitting needles, and that it was none of my business what my cousin had received, despite my cousin sharing plenty of details about the situation. Am I in the wrong? It sounds like there's definitely some family mystery at play here. Asking for something sentimental that isn't being used seems totally fair. It's kind of like when my dad and his siblings picked items after my grandma passed. Everyone had their turn, and it felt good to know the things were going to be appreciated. That glass sculpture I got means a lot to me, and knowing it's displayed makes it even more special. It's tough when emotions get tangled up in family heirlooms, but it's all about keeping the memories alive and making sure they're not just collecting dust. Plus, if your cousin isn't attached to the item, it's understandable to want it to go to someone who will cherish it. In the next story, we dive into a heartwarming holiday dilemma that has everyone talking. Imagine navigating family dynamics while trying to spread some Christmas cheer. What would you do? Join us as we uncover the twists and turns of one person's decision to gift their relatives this festive season. I am a 27-year-old female, and I got into an argument with my 32-year-old sister a few weeks ago. She and her partner dropped off my 2-year-old nephew and 8-month-old niece at my mother's house late Saturday night so they could go to the laundromat. My mother agreed to watch them, and I helped by holding my niece while my mother took care of a few things in the house. I also helped entertain the children and ordered pizza for everyone. When my sister and her partner returned, I made a joke about them waiting for me to clean up a messy diaper before coming back. My sister responded with a joke of her own. We all gathered in the living room. My sister sat in a rocking chair while I sat on the couch with my head resting on my mother's lap. At that moment, my sister started criticizing me for being clingy and annoying. Initially, I did not mind, but when my mother, who does not speak English, asked what was happening, I explained that my sister was being jealous. My mother suggested that my sister could lay her head on her other side and reassured her that there was no need for jealousy. My sister continued to say that I was too old to be clingy, that I was the only sibling who behaved this way, and that I needed to grow up. I became frustrated when she encouraged her partner to join in on the insults directed at me, prompting me to leave the room after expressing my anger. The following day, I received a text from her saying, "Sorry if my comments offended you." I did not interpret this as a genuine apology, as it lacked accountability. I suggested she reflect on her actions, emotions, and words before we could have a serious discussion, explaining that this was not the first time she had acted this way. I also mentioned that her half-hearted apology was insufficient. She responded by reaffirming her earlier comments, stating that I appeared foolish for being affectionate towards my mother, who has never shown affection to her. She claimed that I needed to stop being childish and that no one wanted me around. She accused me of disrupting their peace and said I should not be at my mother's house. In response, I told her that she was still the jealous and bitter person she had always been and emphasized that I could be at my mother's house because she is my mother. I also mentioned that I did not care for her choices and therefore did not care what she thought of me. My sister declared she did not want me around her children if I held such an opinion of her, stating she would block me. Now that Christmas is approaching, my mother asked my sister if it would be acceptable for me to give presents to her children. My sister responded that she would not allow them to open the gifts. My mother suggested that I should not buy them anything. In the past, my father's side of the family invited us over for Christmas, and my aunts and uncles gave presents to my cousins but not to us. I do not want to exclude any of my nephews or nieces, as it would be immature to take my problems with my sister out on the children. However, I also do not want to give my sister any reason to disrupt Christmas as she has in the past. Would I be wrong to give my nephew and niece presents? You did nothing to be ashamed of. It's pretty ridiculous that your sister is punishing her kids because she's acting out. Honestly, it sounds like she's just being petty and controlling, and it's a shame she's willing to sabotage family relationships to get her way. It takes a real piece of work to berate someone who has actually helped her out. If gifts are off the table this year because of her decree, it might be better to just hold off altogether. The 8-month-old won't even notice, and the 2-year-old probably won't care about the number of gifts. If there's a strong urge to give something, maybe consider a savings bond that can be saved for a later date, but otherwise, it seems like a waste given the situation. In the next story, prepare to dive into a heated debate as we explore a situation that raises the age-old question of parental responsibility versus personal boundaries. A simple encounter leads to a whirlwind of opinions and judgments, leaving one individual wondering if they crossed the line. Buckle up as we unravel this moral dilemma and find out if they truly are the am I the jerk in this gripping tale. Recently, at a school event, the teacher asked if the parent group I am a part of could provide cookies and cocoa. I thought it might be nice to also provide toppings for the cocoa, specifically marshmallows, whipped cream, and sprinkles. A child told me that she does not drink cocoa and asked for just a cup of whipped cream. Since she and her friends were the first in line, I noticed that as she enjoyed the chocolate chip cookies, it was likely not an allergy to chocolate but rather preference not to drink cocoa. As soon as she made her request, the 5 other children wanted cups of whipped cream as well. I realized this could lead to a larger issue, so I explained to her that I only had a limited supply of whipped cream. I mentioned that if I said yes to her request, I would have to let everyone else do the same, which would mean that the people behind her in line would not have any whipped cream to add to their cocoa. Instead, I offered her a cup to grab some water, but she walked away upset. 5 minutes later, her mother approached me asking for a cup of whipped cream. This led to another immediate request from others, wanting cups of whipped cream. I reiterated my explanation about the whipped cream and the line of people waiting. The mother left, clearly frustrated. A teacher who was attending the event with her child and was not connected to the class or parent group then approached me, and I once again faced a chorus of me 2 requests for whipped cream. I explained that there was still a line out the door and down the hall, and since I only had a certain amount of whipped cream, if I allowed one child to have it, I would have to say yes to everyone. Therefore, I had to respectfully decline. When this teacher caught me with my back turned, she took the whipped cream anyway and gave it to the child, which triggered a flood of requests from others wanting the same thing. For the next 45 minutes, I had to continuously say no to requests for whipped cream until everyone had gone through the line. Fortunately, we did not run out, but the last person to use it got the very last bit from the last can. So, am I the antagonist for saying no, and for being upset that the teacher took the whipped cream anyway? Totally agree, not at all the a-hole in this situation. The entitlement of that teacher to just give the kid a puppuccino anyway is so rude. Kids can definitely handle being told no. They might get upset, but honestly, it won't hurt them. If they always get their way, that's what leads to bigger issues down the road. And let's be real, kids will ask for inappropriate portions of anything sugary if allowed. It's up to adults to teach them about portion control so everyone gets a fair share. Honestly, those who think otherwise are probably the same ones raising entitled kids who don't understand boundaries. In the next story, we dive into a heated family debate that has sparked a fiery discussion on Reddit. Picture this, a young adult standing firm on their boundaries while their parent pushes for a little indulgence. But when it comes to personal items, how far is too far? I am 19 years old and I did my mother's makeup yesterday for fun. She really liked how I was able to cover up her dark spots and asked me what I used. I told her it was a color corrector that I bought in Korea. She then asked me to explain how it works because she wanted to use it from now on too. I explained how each color is meant to correct another. Specifically, I told her I used the peachy color to correct her dark spots. She said, "I am going to use it tomorrow before I leave for church in the morning." I replied, "Please wake me up and have me put it on you." I felt extremely nervous about this because she has a history of using my makeup without asking and often uses products incorrectly, leading to damage. I expressed that I would prefer she not use mine at all, but if she insisted, I wanted to be there to supervise. As I was going to bed, I considered hiding my color corrector so she would not be able to use it without my supervision. However, I decided to trust her and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to find her rummaging through my products in my room. I asked, "Did you already use my color corrector?" She replied, "Yes." I quickly got up and was horrified to see that she had done everything I feared. She did not know how much product to use, so she applied too much, creating 2 large craters in the product. Additionally, she mixed the 2 colors that are in the product. The green is supposed to counteract redness, while the peach is meant to counteract dark spots. By mixing both, the entire product became a muddy mess. I asked her why she used it when I had told her multiple times to wait for me to be awake and supervise her. She explained that she tried to wake me up, but since I did not respond, she went ahead and used it anyway. I said, "If I did not respond, then you should have put it down. How am I supposed to use this now?" She told me I was overreacting and urged me to hurry up and give her more of my products before she left. I told her to leave my room and asked her to exit. She yelled at me, claiming I was overreacting, and slammed the door on her way out. I spent the morning crying out of frustration. It was not as if she was asleep while I did her makeup with the color corrector. She saw me use it and literally had me explain it. I never touched the green-colored corrector, so I do not understand why she mixed them. Moreover, the product clearly has the colors separated into distinct sections. The fact that I had not mixed them indicated that I intended to use them separately. I cannot comprehend why she thought it would be a good idea to mix them. Am I the one overreacting? You are not to blame. It's pretty clear that she doesn't respect your belongings or your boundaries, so keeping your makeup locked up is a smart move. She needs to pay for what she ruined. It's only fair since she took it upon herself to use your stuff without permission. Maybe bringing her to a beauty store could help. Seeing a professional demonstrate products might make her realize the value of what she's messing with. But honestly, if she keeps acting like this, treating her like a child might be the best approach. She needs to learn that her actions have consequences, and locking your things up is just a necessary step to protect your belongings from her. In the next story, we dive into a heated roommate showdown that sparks a debate over respect and responsibility. When personal belongings get damaged, tensions rise and questions of fairness come to the forefront. Buckle up as we explore whether this roommate is the jerk for demanding accountability from their friends. For context, this situation has been ongoing for the past 2 weeks. Things have escalated, and while we have talked it out, I believe there are still some unresolved issues. Much of the tension over the past 2 days has been about the dishes, but that is not the main focus of my concern. A significant number of the dirty dishes are not mine, as I have been ill and have only used spoons for soup and mugs for tea. 2 weeks ago, my roommate had pneumonia and then passed it on to me. His doctor told him that it was not contagious, but that was clearly not true since I caught it just 2 days after he received that information. The last 11 days have been extremely challenging for me, especially since I also have asthma. 4 days into my illness, my roommate was intoxicated along with one of his friends. He was heavily intoxicated and upset because his girlfriend had broken up with him after a 3-year relationship, which is understandable. The combination of marijuana and alcohol made his behavior quite erratic. I was sitting in my grandfather's recliner, which I had taken from my camp before I sold it, and I watched him act out inappropriately. He was breaking everything he could find in the room. He broke my broom, which I did not mind, and he also broke a random white chair whose origin none of us knew. At that moment, he was damaging his vacuum cleaner as well. I attempted to calm him down by explaining that his actions would not help him feel better, but he ignored me. He then smashed the glass of one of the doors on my grandfather's snack cabinet, which I had repurposed into a baking cabinet, right in front of me. He offered me a half-hearted apology, something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that is unfortunate." I confronted him with his friend sitting on my couch laughing in the background, and then I left the room in anger. This incident occurred at 2 in the morning. A couple of days later, after reflecting on what had happened, I sent him a long message on Discord explaining that he owed me for breaking the cabinet. We discussed it today, but the conversation did not lead to any resolution other than my reiteration that he owes me for the cabinet, that his friend owes me for damaging the speakers of my television, and that he and his friends collectively owe me for breaking my couch a week and a half after I moved it into the apartment. I come from a family that firmly believes that if you break something belonging to someone else, you should either compensate the owner so they can replace it or replace it yourself. I made this point clear during our conversation, mentioning that I had broken one of their office chairs and was actively trying to replace it. So I ask, am I in the wrong for asking my roommate and his friends to reimburse me for the damage to my belongings? Totally, you did nothing improper here. If someone can't control their emotions and ends up breaking your stuff, they definitely owe you. It's fair to put together an itemized list of what was broken and how much it costs to repair or replace each item. Just make sure to keep it reasonable and not charge more than the depreciated value of anything that wasn't brand new. It's simple. You break it, you buy it. Drunk or heartbroken, that doesn't give anyone a free pass to be destructive. Present the list, ask them to Venmo you, and move on from the drama. In the next story, we dive into a family feud that unfolded high above the clouds. Picture this: an airplane, a sibling rivalry, and a decision that sparks a heated debate. Was it selfishness or self-preservation? Let's find out. I am a 29-year-old woman with 4 adult siblings. My father is 63 years old, and my oldest brother Cole is 35 years old. My father and Cole live in Asia, while the rest of the family resides in Germany. Recently, my grandmother passed away, and we all plan to attend her funeral together. Although I have never been very close to Cole, we had recently started spending more time together, which I appreciated. While purchasing airplane tickets, I made it clear that I wanted to sit alone by the window. My father enjoys sitting in the aisle, and Cole prefers a window seat. I have not traveled with my family since my teenage years, and I prefer to travel alone. However, Cole was upset and insisted that the family must sit together. I did not mind spending quality time with him, but being in a confined space for an overnight flight did not seem like quality time to me. When we arrived at the check-in counter, I requested a separate window seat. Cole interrupted and told the airport employee that we would sit together and that he would take the middle seat. I ultimately caved in. On the plane, I rested my elbow on the armrest and Cole moved my arm, chuckling as he stated that the person in the middle seat gets both armrests. Although he is not typically an etiquette person, I felt slightly annoyed but did not say anything. The flight itself was tolerable, but I found my experiences sitting next to strangers to be better. During our time in Germany, we had a nice experience together, attended a beautiful funeral, and headed back home. Once again, I expressed my desire to sit alone on the return flight. My father was indifferent about sitting together, but Cole insisted we sit together. At the check-in counter, I stood my ground and asked for a separate seat. My brother and my father were seated together, with Cole taking the middle seat and my father in the aisle seat. Before boarding, Cole called me a traitor several times, but I did not respond. I had a pleasant trip back home. Fortunately, the middle seat next to me was unoccupied. After we landed, we took a taxi home. I told Cole that I had a very nice flight. He replied that his flight was awful because the person in the window seat was irritating, loud, and quite large. He gave me a disapproving look, but I chose not to respond and wanted to move on. Later that evening, he sent me a text stating that I did not appreciate his sacrifice for sitting in the middle seat and that I valued my comfort over personal relationships and the needs of others. He also mentioned that I was rubbing my pleasant experience in his face while he had the worst flight of his life. Now, I feel upset and frustrated because it seems he blames me for his experience. We both want to repair our relationship, but his insistence on sitting with me and placing blame is pushing me away. Is it necessary for a family that travels together to sit together? Perhaps I am not seeing this situation objectively. Am I the antagonist for refusing to sit next to my brother on the plane? It's wild how some people think they can dictate where you sit on a plane. You are not at fault here for sure. An adult should be able to choose a window seat without feeling guilty, especially since Cole could have easily picked another seat just like you did. Plus, let's not forget that the middle seat actually gets both armrests, so it's not all doom and gloom for him. If the aisle and window passengers hog their armrests, then sure, the middle seat is a total bummer, but that's just how it goes. Honestly, if Cole was okay with the middle seat, he could have just rolled with it like you did. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.